I said I was going to finish this one up in the video because we don't want to leave our answers in this form when we can break these down into two parts. This one says 2 plus 12 over 2, and this one says 2 minus 12 over 2. This one gives me 14 over 2. 14 over 2 is a 7. This one gives me negative 10 over 2, which is a negative 5. Moving on to the next problem, I noticed that this one can be simplified because I could divide each of these by 5. That gives me x squared minus 2 equals 0. So my a will be 1, my b happens to be 0 because there is no x term, and my c is negative 2. So when I plug in the formula negative b, I get 0 plus or minus 0 squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. Well, 0 is just 0, so you don't even need to write it anymore. So we really just have plus or minus 0, this would be plus the opposite, negative 4 times negative 2 is a positive 8 all over 2. Well, 8 can be broken down, or the square root of 8 can be broken down into 4 times 2 and then 2 times 2. So we end up getting 2 square root of 2 all over 2. The 2's will then cancel, and I can simply say it's plus or minus the square root of 2. My next example here, I always want to keep my x squared positive, so I'm going to actually move my 4 on this side. So this answer now says 0 equals x squared minus 4x plus 4. This is factorable, and I totally would factor it if it wasn't that I was practicing for quadratic formula. So my a is 1. My b is negative 4, and my c is 4. So I'm going to start thinking about what the formula says. It says negative b, so that would be 4, plus or minus b squared. B squared is 4 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, and c is 4, all over 2 times a. This one gives me 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 16 all over 2. Whenever you get a 0 underneath the square root, that makes 0. You only got one answer, so we just have 4 over 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so 2 is our only solution. I'll show you this using factoring instead. This factors into x minus 2 times x minus 2, and so when you set each of those equal to 0, you can see why you only get positive 2 as your solution. Last example here, again, I like to have my x squared turn positive. It's not in this case, but we could make it positive by dividing by negative 3. We'll go ahead and just leave it negative for right now. Now I'm getting negative x squared plus 3x equals 0. My a term is negative 1, my b is 3, and my c is 0. There is no constant term. So the formula says negative b, which would be negative 3, plus or minus b squared, which would be 3 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. Because I'm multiplying by a 0 here, what I really end up getting is a 0 term, so those fall out. So I get negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 all over negative 2. So negative 3 plus or minus square root of 9 is 3 all over negative 2. Okay, this gives me negative 3 plus 3 all over negative 2, and this gives me negative 3 minus 3 all over negative 2. So this is 0 over negative 2, which is 0. And this last one is negative 6 over negative 2, which is a positive 3. So my two answers are 0 and 3. This also could have been done using factoring. Quadratic formula is a method that we want to use when we can't